We got a crazy week ahead of us, so hang in there. Hopefully we'll have coffee hour next week and every week after that for the rest of the semester for you to join us on. So usually for coffee hour, we feature an international dish. This week is kind of a special situation where we want to welcome you to Florida if you haven't been to Florida before, and FSU in particular. And so we didn't have any group to co-host with, and so we decided to make key lime pie, which is the state of Florida's official dessert, or official pie, maybe pie and dessert. Yeah. Okay. So let's go through the ingredients here. This is a very, very easy to make. I will say right off the bat. You need about a stick of butter here melted, about a cup of graham cracker crumbs, which you can crumb up yourself, just smashing up some graham crackers, or you can buy it pre-ground up too. I've got a big bowl of sugar here. You're not going to need that much, but you'll need some sugar. I've got 6 egg yolks separated out from 6 egg whites, and I'm going to give you options of things to do with these egg whites or not use with these egg whites. And then we've got 3/4 cup of lime juice. You can take this up to a whole cup of lime juice if you like your pie particularly limey. These limes we have here, these are what we call key limes here. They're a little bit smaller than the limes you're going to find in the grocery store. The limes in the grocery store are Persian limes. These are just small little limes. They've got a kind of a very fragrant, bitter juice. So it's a little bit more intense than the Persian limes. And you can buy this pre-juiced in a bottle, but I really recommend, if you're here in town, you can go to Publix and get these limes. If you're abroad, these limes are kind of typical limes, across Asia or South America. But here in the States, we call them key limes. And we've got 1 can of condensed milk, sweetened condensed milk, and a little bit of salt here. Right, so let's get started with the crust. We've got a 9-inch pie pan. This is just a little foil pan. And I got this at Publix too. It's just a couple bucks for a pack of 3. And if you're really careful with it, you might be able to use it twice, but it's not a type of pan you're going to use over and over. If you have like a glass Pyrex pan, you might end up needing to do more of your graham cracker crust. Or you could go up to a 1.5 cups and add just a little bit more butter or what have you. All right, so you've got your crushed graham crackers. It's going to go in the bowl. And we're going to do 1/4 cup of sugar. And this pie crust, you can use this pie crust for pie really, or I use it even for a cheesecake, and I incorporate chopped walnuts into it. It really gives it a nice flavor. I'm going to mix in that sugar there. And then I've got this melted butter. I just melted a whole stick here, so I'm not going to necessarily pour all of it all at once. I'm just going to pour in a good amount. I'm going to mix that up with your fork and get it all spread evenly. You want your graham crackers to be nicely moistened by the butter, but you don't want it to be like soupy. You don't want any butter like down in the bottom here. I'm going to add a little bit more. With key lime pie, the filling of the pie is pretty soft and kind of custardy. And so it's really nice to have a nice kind of contrast of texture with a crunchy crust. And adding a little bit more butter will help get it a little more crunchy there, and it'll hold together easier too when you're pressing it into the pan. The less butter you use, it will end up being a little more kind of crummy rather than cookie-ish. But once it all bakes together, it does form, kind of reefs into like a more sweet, tender graham cracker. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so unfortunately, I do have to be wearing this mask, and I will be wearing it for the foreseeable future since Laura is our camera person, and I want her to be able to get in here and get these close-up shots, but it's one of the things we have to do on campus. And if you come on the campus, you definitely have to wear a mask if you want to come into any of the buildings. Okay, that looks pretty good.
So Jesse, we do have a question about the limes. If someone is not able to access key limes, is it okay to use kind of the Persian limes?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Persian limes, key limes, they'll all work. I mean, it's essentially a lime pie. It's going to be a slightly different lime flavor, you know. I personally haven't done a side-by-side like taste test, but that would be kind of interesting to see how different it really did taste. And these to me they have a unique bitterness to them that Persian limes don't. So it's a small difference, but if you can find these, I would get them. If you know, you could probably get key lime juice that's been juiced and it's on the shelf. I know it's at Publix, and that's a good substitute too. But I think I would go fresh Persian limes before I went to a bottled juice if you could get them. So, all right. So there's a lot of debate about where key lime pie was invented. I don't want to offend any native Floridians, but currently it's believed that key lime pie was invented in New York City. Let me put this over here. There's food historians that scour newspaper articles and newspapers and all kinds of cookbooks and old cookbooks to try and find the origin of a lot of these foods that have become traditional kind of classic dishes. And from what they can tell is that key lime pie is a variation of a recipe from a condensed milk company called Borden that was centered in New York. And the recipe they had created and spread around was called magic lemon pie. And what it thought is that people down in Florida just changed out the limes or changed out the lemons for limes and started making lime pies. And the first documented lime pies in the Miami Herald newspaper was in 1933. And back then, lime pies weren't even that popular. It wasn't even a thing. People made all different types of lime pies. But the one that has become considered traditional and most, authentic is that version of that condensed milk company's recipe. The recipe I'm going to share with you today is one that I wrote after looking through and trying to research all the different variations that are out there and kind of coming up with a version of the pie that is, kind of suits my taste. So I suggest if you like this type of pie, you do some research online and you'll find many, many versions, and you can kind of explore which version you're most interested in. So the traditional one is going to be a lime custard, which we're going to do today, but they take the egg whites and they make a meringue out of the egg whites and top the pie with a meringue, and then that gets toasted on top. Now this is pretty smart. It uses all the ingredients. You don't throw away any egg whites. And then also it eliminates the risk in baking the pie of browning the surface. You don't want to brown the surface of the pie at all. And when you top it with the meringue gets browned, and then the custard just sets, and so it's perfect. So this version that I'm doing is not going to have a meringue topping, and so you're going to really have to watch it in the oven and make sure it doesn't brown. If it starts browning, you want to pull it out immediately. You know it's well cooked, and it's overcooked pretty quickly there. All right, so you wanted to spread this crust all out all the way up to the edge as evenly as possible. And then this crust, you want to pre-bake this. It's going to go in the oven for about 8 minutes, 350 degrees. And let's just drop it in here. You want to watch this because you don't want this to brown too much either. All right, so when this comes out of the oven, it's nice and firm. Got a little bit of browning here, but that's fine. Definitely nothing burned. Because this is going to go back in the oven with your filling. And so if your edge cooked too much, it's going to end up burning. So you just want it to kind of melt the butter and the sugar and get it to set into your crust and get ready for this filling to go in. Okay. Let me brush this off. Michelle, I got any questions? Any more questions, anybody?
Yeah, so would it be sacrilege to have a pre-made pie crust for this?
Okay, so yeah, you can buy pre-made graham cracker crust. There are many versions of this with a pie crust, and so you can buy a frozen pie crust and just make this filling and do it too. That's totally fine. If you do a pie crust, you definitely want to pre-bake that for about 8 to 10 minutes too. Just because once this doesn't bake for that long, there's a really quick baking pie. There is tons of versions I found online that were like frozen versions where you don't even bake it. It's no bake. You mix your ingredients, you put it in the freezer, it freezes solid, and then you pull it out, cut it into pieces, and put it on your plate. And like as it's being served, it softens up enough that it's like this frozen, kind of semi-frozen treat. And so I think there's definitely a lot of purists and a lot of kind of argument about what key lime pie is. And to me, it's anything you want to be. It's a lime pie, any crust, any topping. I think it's fun to be creative personally. But all right, so got the crust, got to get our filling going here. And so I'm going to do this by hand. The first pie that I made yesterday, I did it in an electric mixer and I whipped it real good. And so it made the filling kind of light and airy. If you want your filling to be light and airy, kind of almost like a mousse kind of, you get this, in an electric mixer. I'm trying to get it to become a little more dense. And so I'm going to just hand mix it and honestly make it kind of easier. You don't need as many tools and shouldn't have to do too much mixing here. It's just pretty straightforward. Get the ingredients well mixed together. And we're going to put it through a strainer. So we're going to add another 1/4 cup of sugar to these egg yolks. And so what I changed from the original kind of classic recipes is I added more egg yolks and more lime juice and then a little bit more sugar. And what I was looking for in my pie was a very distinct and intense lime flavor. And I also, since I'm not doing the meringue topping, I also wanted my pie to come all the way up to the edge. I wanted my pie to be totally full. And so the old styles, the pie only comes up about halfway, and then the meringue fills the other half. And since I'm not doing a meringue, I really want my pie to be all the way to the top. I want a big bite of lime custard pie. So that was my objective with this recipe, was adding volume and richness of the eggs to balance with the extra lime juice, so that you're just going to have a more rich pie. Okay, so we got the yolks and the sugar. All right, and I got my lime juice here. And then I'm going to do this condensed milk. And 1 can of condensed milk, it should be 14 ounces. It's pretty heavy stuff because it has so much sugar melted into it. But when it comes out to it, I think it's 1 1/4 cup in a can of condensed milk, I believe. I'd have to look that up. So can anybody tell me what year key lime pie became the official state pie? Does anybody know? got a random little quick quiz here. I know y'all got Google. Laura's shaking her head at me. She's like, "Why, Jesse?"
I may or may not have the Wikipedia page open, but I'll give other folks a chance to take a guess. We have 1960 as a guess.
1960? That's pretty early. That's pretty early. It took a little bit longer to become the state pie. And actually, there was some. It was a challenge to get key lime pie as the state pie. There was a second contender that other people thought deserved to be the state pie more than key lime pie. Anybody have an idea of what that pie could have been?
Well, for the year, we do have a winner with Betty. She has guessed 2006.
Oh no, it's not 2006.
It wasn't 2006. Oh, Wikipedia's wrong, y'all. Can't trust it.
Sorry. It says 2006 in Wikipedia?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm off, but I read that it was 1994.
Betty swears it's 2006. She says in all caps, "Please believe me."
I'm gonna check my numbers here after this. I'm gonna have to look into this. So now we're debating when it actually became the state dessert. You see, there's a lot of contention around key lime pie. There's a lot of strong feelings about this dessert. It's a big deal in Florida. This is, pretty much any kind of coastal restaurant you go to is going to have key lime pie. Whether you're down in the Keys or you're up at the beach here on the Gulf Coast, doesn't matter. Everybody's a version of key lime pie. All right, so we're going to do the lime juice. I'm just going to do it all at once. And this one, I think I did about 3/4 cup of lime juice on this one. The one yesterday I did 1 cup, and I mean, I like it. I think it's awesome, but it's not for the faint of heart. All right, so here we go.
We have some research being thrown in the chat box that 1994, the state legislature recognized key lime pie as an important symbol, but in 2006 they actually passed it. So.
See, look at that. Look at that. All right, so we're gonna add a touch of salt here. I think I said about a ½ teaspoon or so. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit out of here. Not too much, not too little. Laura actually gave me a great tip for the crust in this. She was a big advocate of having a salty element to this pie. And she told me how, was it a restaurant that you went to? Yeah, a restaurant she went to, talked to the chef, and they had crumbled saltines and mixed them with the graham cracker crumbs, which gave it the crust, like the salty crispiness. Something about salt and lime, I don't know, maybe margaritas, that's all that comes to mind right now. All right, so that's well combined. Nothing too wild here. Set this aside. All right, so I'm gonna pass this through a strainer and then into the pie crust. You can just pour it right into the pie crust. This is just kind of the chef in me coming out. I wanna strain out any kind of lumps or any kind of weird things that are in there. I know most of y'all probably don't have a strainer like this, but it's just what I'm gonna do, so. I'm gonna pour it through. Can you hold this with one hand, Laura? Thanks. All right, I'm gonna scrape the bowl, every last drop. Oh. See, yesterday when I foamed it up, it gained a lot of volume. And today it took some lime juice out, so it's not quite filling up quite as much as I wanted it to. It's funny how you do make slight changes to recipes and you'll get, major different results here. All right, there we go. That's still good.
So Jesse, about how many limes did you use for this recipe?
Of the key limes, let's see, 3, 6, probably about 15 of these little ones. You know, you can juice limes. Sometimes they're more juicy than others. At Publix, where I got these at, you buy a bag of limes. I don't have the bag anymore, but I think it was about a pound of limes per bag, and that should cover 3/4 cup. Okay, well, let's even this out a little bit. Yes. All right, so I don't know if anybody's ever seen one of these. This is a microplane, and this is totally optional and definitely not traditional. But if you want a burst of, you know, lime flavor and aroma, you want to do a little lime zest here, and you just want to just do a little bit over the top. Nothing crazy. We don't want it to, you don't want to get into the white too much. You just want to stay right in the green. Kind of tap it in there. It'll give, that zest has so much of the flavor from the oils and aroma that even just a tiny bit, we don't want to change the texture. But just a tiny bit will really give it a real pronounced aroma as people bring it up to their mouth to eat it. So, oh, this is literally one of my favorite desserts. So easy to make, and there's so many variations. I really hope you all do try to make it. But from here, we're going to put this in the oven, 350. You want to bake it for 15 minutes and check it. If it's starting to brown, it'll start to brown on the edge here first. Starting to brown there, pull it off. And if it's not starting to brown yet, leave it in for another 5 minutes and then pull it out. It's not going to look like it's set. It's not going to look like it's done. It's going to look like, you know, liquidy still. And it needs to be refrigerated overnight. And then after you refrigerate it, it sets up more firm so that you can slice it and then serve it. Here, I'm going to pop this over here. And then, oh yeah, let's talk about the egg whites. All right, so for the egg whites, if you wanted to make a meringue and do a topping of meringue on here, you are going to want an electric mixer, and you're going to need one because you whip the egg whites for a couple minutes on medium-high speed. For 6 egg whites, you're probably going to need to put in about 15 tablespoons of sugar, and you slowly add that in as it's whipping. And once it forms nice firm peaks and it'll firm up in the container that it's you know, whipping in, you pull it out and you spread it on top with a spatula, and then it'll brown evenly over the top of it and kind of set on the inside. And the thing about meringues that's kind of challenging is if you don't, you know, you got to add cornstarch, you got to add all this stuff to it for it to stabilize. And so the meringue, a quick meringue like this only works if you're going to serve the pie that evening for a dinner, for like a dinner party. It doesn't really hold up for much longer than that. It'll end up falling kind of like a souffle falls. I think it's easier, especially with a pie like this, to bake it nude and then top it with whipped cream. Whipped cream is probably more popular than the meringue at this point, at least up in the northern part of Florida. The whipped cream version is much more popular, or just eating it plain is very popular too. So, but the meringue is an option, and you can just look up pie meringue recipe too if you wanted to give it a try online. Okay, so let's pull out our plates. Get the stuff out of the way. Here we go. So I'm going to pull out my pie from yesterday. I do have to confess, I had a piece or two. I had to taste. I didn't make sure it tastes good. This is quality assurance. Okay.
That seems to happen a lot on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I always do a practice run on Thursday. And then the final run today. So, and I write these recipes, so I have to make sure they're good. I don't want to give you guys bad recipes. All right, so with the pie, it's also really nice to just pop it in the freezer for about 10 or 15 minutes before you serve it. Kind of super chills it, firms it up, makes it easier to cut. And Just makes it that much more refreshing. Okay. Oops. There we go. All right. So there is the pie. And I've got a little bit of whipped cream here. Uh-oh. My whipped cream in the freezer. It's kind of like ice cream. I'll let that warm up for a second while I do a little lime garnish. For the lime garnish, you just cut a nice slice of lime. And then you cut through most of the way here. All right. Do a little frozen whipped cream. And a little garnish with lime, and that's it. Some people like more whipped cream than others. A lot of people use Cool Whip, and to me, that is unacceptable. Can't do Cool Whip. It's crossing the line. But you know, that's my personal opinion. You know, everybody's welcome to do what they want. So here's my pie. I hope you guys try it at home. And that's about all I got for you today. Thanks so much for joining. And Michelle, thank you so much for those Florida-inspired tunes that we heard. That really in the mood
Oh, I did what I could.
Yeah.
Before we
right, well,
before we head out to our discussion groups, do you know much about the Key Lime Pie Festival in South Florida?
I've heard about it. I saw they have a key lime pie like eating contest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to eat it without your hands or something.
Right. It looks super fun.
Yeah. Have you been?
No, I haven't. I did look at a lot of photos of it today though. And I definitely recommend that if anyone wants to see something that just looks so fun, give it a Google.
Right. Well, one day I'll definitely go. I promise you. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And back to you, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. Go ahead and